Ismael Borrero is a Cuban Greco-Roman wrestler with an Olympic gold medal and 2 world championships under his belt. Borrero is famous for his use of the Russian tie, or 2-on-1, which allows its user to isolate an arm and bypass his opponent's defensive positioning. The most fundamental concept regarding defensive wrestling is that there are 3 main lines of defense.
Our 3 lines of defense is our head, our hands, and our hips.
If you make an attack but the opponent's head or hands are in the way, they can block you and create separation. Once you bypass the head and hands, you need to deal with their hips in order to finish. The standard Russian tie sees the offensive wrestler at a side-on angle to their opponent, with the far arm controlling the wrist and the near arm controlling high on the shoulder. The shoulder control allows you to manipulate the opponent's posture by pressing downward. The angle and arm control means that the opponent's head, hands, and hips are bypassed, providing a direct route to a finish. Borrero prioritizes the wrist control rather than the shoulder control, using an overhand grip with the V in his palm facing up to provide secure control of the wrist. Most escapes from the Russian tie attack the shoulder positioning, and by focusing on securing the wrist, Borrero can retain the position for longer and re-enter if he loses shoulder control by simply climbing back up the shoulder and hunting for an angle. His tie is more upright than usual as well, which lets him transition between pressuring directly on a squared-up opponent and angling off to bypass their defense. Since leg attacks aren't permitted in Greco, he doesn't have to worry about getting low to attack or defend the legs. The most common entry for the Russian tie is by countering an opponent's tie and passing the arm across. A short shrug of the shoulders breaks the opponent's collar tie, and the arm is passed across their body, providing the perfect angle to circle into the Russian tie. Borrero frequently enters the Russian by shrugging and passing his opponent's ties. The key to this entry is keeping the movement short. The distance created by the shrug should be minimal. While countering collar ties is a consistent entry, it has the downside of being reactive. A wrestler who relies on getting to the Russian tie can't afford to wait until his opponent gives him a tie to counter, but Borrero proactively enters the Russian tie through hand fighting. Borrero approaches in a bladed stance and leads with his shoulder, pressuring into his opponent while he looks to control the same side wrist on both sides and force the hands down. His bladed stance presents a smaller target, making it more difficult for opponents to get underneath his chest and secure underhooks, instead encouraging them to settle for a collar tie on the lead side, which he's always ready to counter. The bladed stance also puts him at an angle that reduces the amount of distance he needs to circle in order to secure the Russian tie. Forcing the wrist down removes the alignment between his opponent's elbow and hips, making it easier to control and pass the wrist between his own hands. By controlling both hands, Borrero reduces the chance that the opponent can counter his grip as he looks to enter the Russian tie. Let's revisit the basic position for a moment. There's 2 points of control here, a grip on the opposite side wrist and an arm hugging above the elbow. As long as Borrero secures one of these control points, he can transition to the Russian tie. His most consistent entry comes off a cross wrist grip as he fights the hands down and passes his opponent's wrist to his hand on the opposite side, before chasing the shoulder and circling off into the Russian tie. He most often attacks the wrist on his lead side, as it's easier to circle off with his leg already in front, but if he can secure a crossed wrist grip on the far side, he'll bring his rear leg forward in order to attack that side. If he can't get to the shoulder directly when he secures the wrist, he'll control the elbow and circle off while climbing up to the shoulder, securing the position. Borrero will also enter the Russian tie through elbow control. Forcing the hands down opens up the opponent's elbow, exposing it for a grip on the tricep, and reducing their leverage to fight the grip. After establishing same side wrist control, Borrero will swat the elbow inwards, effectively passing the arm across his body and giving him the cross wrist he needs to begin circling out and climbing to the shoulder. He can also hit this more methodically, controlling the tricep and closing off his own elbow to his hip, while circling out to direct the opponent's arm across and secure wrist control. Pressuring in heavily behind his shoulder will often give Borrero push reactions, allowing him to use the opponent's momentum against them. When opponents try to push into him heavily to relieve the pressure, or expend a lot of effort in forcing their wrists back toward the center as Borrero isolates them, they expose themselves for an arm drag. Borrero will occasionally finish the arm drag directly, but most often uses it to pass the arm across and enter the Russian tie. Opponents sometimes also expose themselves to the arm drag when they open their elbow and reach across to fight his wrist control. He'll also take advantage of these push reactions by dropping back and angling off, throwing his opponent off balance as they attempt to alleviate the pressure. Borrero's pressure will often force opponents to make bad decisions in panic, or draw stalling calls which put him on top in the parterre position, where he can score with gut wrenches and throws. When wrestling high-level opponents, the first move will usually be defended. Borrero is aware of this and is always prepared to chain his entries together on both sides. Borrero will typically attack on the side of his lead leg, but opponents attempting to circle away from his entry will often expose their other side, either by giving up their wrist or bringing their leg forward. Borrero will circle towards the opposite side, switching his lead leg, and take the Russian tie on the other side. It's the same principle as passing the guard in jiu-jitsu. By attacking one side, you can make the opponent overcommit and expose their other flank. Borrero will also create entries on the near side by encouraging opponents to fight grits. They'll often try to fight the wrist control by crossing their arm over and attacking Borrero's wrist on the far side. Borrero will use this as an opportunity to secure his own cross wrist and enter the Russian tie. He'll bait it out by attacking the wrist on his rear side in order to get his opponent to reach across and break it, providing him with the cross wrist he needs to enter the Russian tie. Once Borrero has established the Russian tie, opponents will fight to kill the angle and square back up, often by maintaining head positioning or framing off Borrero's head. Borrero can kill most of these attempts to square up by maintaining his angle. As his opponent circles off, he'll drop his base and use the grip to pull them off balance while constantly pivoting outside their stance. This allows him to get behind the frames in the head position, removing their leverage and giving him access to the back. The most consistent escape from the Russian tie is fighting the grip, either by attacking the elbow on the arm controlling the wrist, or by removing the hand controlling the shoulder. When opponents look to grip fight out of the Russian tie, Borrero will counter-grip. The arm controlling the shoulder will reach through and peel off their far side wrist, preventing them from attacking the lock. Once the grip is removed, he'll climb back up the shoulder and re-establish the position.